Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My time is showing 4 p.m. Eastern, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm just going to run through a couple of housekeeping items, and then I will hand it off to our great host for today's webinar. The Q&A and the chat are not going to be used today. We have 30 minutes together, and I want to make sure that we give the most amount of time to our guest speaker today. So for that purpose, we are not going to have the chat used or the Q&A. If you do have some questions, please contact successcoach@d2l.com and we can help you out with all things webinar related. The recording and the slide deck will be available on the Teaching and Learning website for your reference later this week. Hopefully it'll be up by tomorrow. This is where you registered for today's session. It's where you can also register for future sessions as well. So just some terms you might hear today that I just want to make sure everybody is comfortable with. If you've been to a D2L webinar before, this slide will likely be familiar to you. You might hear both D2L and Brightspace today, just to differentiate those for you. D2L is the company and Brightspace is the product that we make, similar to how you have Apple and they make things like the Mac or the iPad. We also have the Brightspace community, which is a great online community where we have a team from D2L on there answering questions and promoting some conversation, as well as fellow educators and leadership on there to ask and answer questions as well. So if you haven't already created an account there, it is free to do so, and I encourage you to do that. So without further ado, I'm just going to pass this off to Monty, who is our guest speaker for today. We are so lucky to have him speak to us today, and I really appreciate his time. So I'm going to let him take it away. Thank you, Monty.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I am so happy to be here and I really appreciate it. I'm going to share my presentation here. And as Bridget indicated, this will be available to everyone. Today, we're talking about supporting LGBTQ students in the online classroom. So my name is Monty Tanner. I use he, him pronouns. I am the assistant principal at CBE Learn, which is the online school going from grades 1 through 12 in the Calgary Board of Education. This past year, we've also been involved in Hub Online Learning, which means that we have upwards of 18,000 students that we're working with in an online environment. In addition, I'm also a sessional instructor at the University of Lethbridge with the Faculty of Education, where I provide instruction on how to teach online. So what's our agenda today? What's our gay agenda? Okay, we're gonna go through the LGBTQ 101. We're gonna talk some basic terminology. I'm gonna introduce something really fun called the gender unicorn. And then the heart of our presentation is around the support, why it's important to support LGBTQ youth, how we can support LGBTQ youth. There will be a reflection question and then resources. Now, the resources are really key because there's a lot of information that I'm going to provide you with in the next 27 minutes. And so I want to make sure that you have access to those resources afterwards. These are resources that I've gathered together and curated, created, and posted in a variety of places that I want to make sure that you have access to. All right, terminology. I dated this 2021 because things are changing. So LGBTQIP2SAA. If we were face-to-face, I'd give you a chocolate bar if you could tell me what each of those letters means. It's the alphabet mafia. And some of the terms you're going to hear are queer, LGBTQ. Some of the other terms you might see GSM, gender, sexual minority, SOGI, sexual orientation, and gender identity. For the purpose of this presentation and the language that I'm most comfortable using, I'll intersperse the term queer and the term LGBTQ throughout. One of the very best resources that I found is an online ebook that is available free. It's called Defining LGBTQ+ by Sam Killerman. The link is there. It's a great document. It has all sorts of terminology. It has some of the basics: gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, queer questioning. It also goes into some new concepts, new topics, and new definitions you might not be familiar with. demigirl, gray romantic, ace, agender. There's a lot of terminology surrounding this topic. And I think that this is a great resource so you can become familiar with all of these terms. I love this guy. I love this chubby little unicorn. So this is the gender unicorn. There are a few different versions of this same concept. You'll see here, there's also the genderbread person, might be something you're familiar with. I really love this unicorn though. So if we look at this unicorn, we understand that things like gender identity, sex, emotional attraction, all of these things are on a continuum. So I would ask you at some point to actually look at this and see, okay, where do I fit on this? When I look at gender identity, that's how I see myself. That's how I perceive myself. Am I female? Am I male? Am I somewhere in between, or am I neither? Where would you see yourself fitting on that? Gender expression is what we look like on the outside. Do I wear traditionally masculine clothing? Do I wear traditionally feminine clothing? Do I do my nails? Do I grow a beard? Do I do all of those things? Sex assigned at birth is the basic understanding of biology. In most cases, it's either male, female, or intersex. That is the genitals, and that is the chromosomes. Now, what I really like about this is it talks about who you're physically attracted to. Are you attracted to women? Are you attracted to men? Are you attracted to both? Are you attracted to neither? Where do you fall in that? And then emotionally attracted. Again, in many cases, that could be the same thing, but not necessarily. So looking at these 5 different dimensions will help you understand how gender expression, attraction is all on this continuum. So why is this important to support LGBTQ youth? More people are identifying as queer than at any point in history. 66% of Generation Z identify as exclusively heterosexual. Only 2/3 identify as exclusively heterosexual. That means 1 in 3 students that you're going to have in your class is not exclusively heterosexual. You'll see here the statistics have changed based on generations, based on attitudes. And what's really important to notice is that young people actually have more of a less binary view of sexuality. So younger generations don't feel as strong to use labels like gay or straight, but they see it as a sliding scale where they can fall somewhere in between. It is so important to support our students. It's so important to support these vulnerable members of our community because only 1 in 3 LGBTQ youth find their home to be affirming. That means that others face rejection, mistreatment, leading to a lot of adverse outcomes, such as homelessness, abuse, bullying, drug use, and other dangers. These are very vulnerable students. We know that bullying is pervasive. We know that it happens in physical environments. We know that it happens in online environments. These are just some statistics of how bullying impacts queer kids. 68% of trans kids, 55% of lesbian, 42% of gay report being verbally harassed about their perceived gender identity or sexual orientation. Now that's huge. That is a huge, significant number. 47%, almost half of trans youth had seriously considered suicide. That's not okay. That's not okay. We have to do better. LGBTQ youth are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide if they're rejected by their families, which, as you saw, can be up to 2 out of 3 cases. They are 8 times more likely to attempt suicide. In addition, queer youth who have been subjected to conversion therapy reported more than twice the rate of attempted suicide compared to those who were not. This survey, national survey on LGBTQ youth mental health, was literally released today. This is the newest information. It came out today. So it's great to see this data. It's great to have the Trevor Project that has put all of this together. Again, there's a link right there where you can go and you can explore this data on your own, but it's very remarkable. 72% of queer kids have symptoms of anxiety. 62% of queer kids have major depressive disorder. And in the last year, almost half of queer youth have wanted counseling from a mental health professional, but did not receive it. These kids are hurting and they need help. So what can we do? First off, I challenge you to remember this. I challenge you to remember that just with any other student, you may be the one positive influence in their life. I love these two videos here. And one of them is from the perspective of students at a high school. One is from perspective of students at post-secondary. But in both cases, you're going to hear the voice of students telling you what it is that they actually want. I'll leave this for another time. I will let you watch these on your own. This quote gets to me every time. This is from a grade 12 student in Thunder Bay, Canada. He says, at the beginning of the school year, we'd always run through the school rules or whatever they were, but I would think to myself, I'm gay. Am I safe here? What can we do to ensure that our kids are safe? 4 themes we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about representation and how that matters. We're going to highlight names, pronouns, and how you can use those in your course. We're going to highlight different forms of bullying and how you can be aware of it. And finally, we'll look at some technical and logistical aspects to help support these queer kids in your course. Representation matters. Students need to see themselves so they feel supported. A quotation here from a teacher that won a prestigious award in British Columbia. I want kids to look at me and say, hey, there's someone like me. This is who I am. Kids need to see that. They need to see themselves to feel supported. So a message that can come from society and where queer people are invisible is that you don't exist and you don't matter. But when people see representations of themselves in the media, this can foster a great sense of affirmation for their identity. And feeling affirmed with your own self can boost positive feelings of self-worth, which is quite different than feeling as if you're wrong or bad for just existing as who you are. When more queer people are included in the media, this means that they're actually seen by society, as opposed to being rendered unseen or invisible. This is good for everyone because when people are able to see something represented, they're better able to understand and grasp who those people are, whether they're queer or not. This creates an important shift in the social consciousness to include people from a range of different backgrounds. Representation in mainstream media is getting better, but it's not great. Out of primetime scripted broadcast from last television season, there were only about 70 queer characters on TV. Now, when I look back and we talk about the statistics of how many of our students and young people are non-exclusively heterosexual, it's quite telling. There's some representation there, not quite good enough. So how can you put this into your classroom? Now, I've got a screenshot here, right out of Brightspace from something that I use in my own course. I teach an English 30 level course, and we have a whole unit on self-discovery. So part of that is identifying myself, identifying myself, and representing that to the students. Other ways you can include this is bring in works from LGBTQ creators, from artists, from poets, from writers, from mathematicians, from scientists, and recognize their achievements throughout your course. You also want to try and avoid assumptions of gender or sexuality, which includes avoiding erasure, whether that's active or passive, which we'll talk about in a minute here. And another great thing is using gender neutral language. This is a great tip. It doesn't matter what grade you're teaching at, what level you're teaching at. If gender is irrelevant, keep it out of the conversation. Don't use terms like businessman, housewife, male nurse, woman pilot. Don't use terms like that. It's absolutely necessary. Not everything needs to be gendered in that way. Now, queer erasure is a cultural tendency to remove queer groups either intentionally or unintentionally from record, or to dismiss or downplay their contribution to society. So a little tongue in cheek, these two pieces here. On the left, you'll see it's an image of Samira Wiley. She was a star in Orange is the New Black. It's a picture of her on her wedding day. That's her wife next to her. But you'll see the comment says, getting married on the same day as my best friend is absolutely BFF goals. Are there any pictures of what their husbands look like? This is a great video too. Again, I'm not going to show it, but I encourage you to look it up. And it's all about gal pals. Are these women more than just friends? It's tongue in cheek, but it's a strong reminder of erasure of a whole segment of our population. How else can we support our queer kids? Let's talk about names and pronouns. I think it's super important to identify yourself and respect how students identify themselves as well. Now, here's a quote that came out just a couple days ago because it was International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. This individual here is non-binary. They identify as they, them. As a non-binary person, they say, when someone introduces themselves with their pronouns, I feel more comfortable that they will understand mine. So in my course, I do just this. I identify my name and my pronouns. Hi, my name is Monty Tanner. I use he, him pronouns. It's exactly what I said when I started this presentation here. I put this in my welcome message. You'll see here right on the homepage of Brightspace. I put it in an email that I send home to parents or to students as well. The other thing that I do is I include an introductory survey. I ask them, what's your name? What should I call you? And I ask them what their pronouns are. Now, for many of us, we have some sort of survey like this. We have a get to know you survey, whether we're trying to find out basic information, age, grade, what class you've taken before, what marks you've achieved, that sort of thing. If we're trying to find out who to contact, contact information, which parent guardian should I contact, what time of the day, or with our older students, adult students, are you working? Are there things that will be a barrier to your success? Have you worked online before? As you can see here from this quiz that I've set up, I have about 34 different questions, but the two that I added at the beginning, what's your preferred name? What should I call you? And what are your preferred pronouns? Now, it took me probably 20 seconds to add this in. The quiz tool is so great for allowing that feature in there, but it's so important. I truly do believe that you call someone what they call themselves. I believe that this is true no matter the context. And we're not even necessarily talking about students that are changing gender or transitioning. If Michael wants to be called Mike, you call him Mike. It's something that we just naturally do. It's not hard to call someone in a respectful way what they wish to call themselves. Now, the second point here, what are your preferred pronouns? For many students, doesn't matter, they'll put their pronouns in. It doesn't matter to them one way or the other, but for the students that it does matter to, it matters a lot. This is a private discussion message that I had from one of my students a couple years ago, and this was completely unsolicited. This came out from the student after filling out that form. Thank you so much, the student said. Having my name and pronouns changed mean a lot to me because I don't get that support at home. Thank you so much. This is why we do it, folks. This is why we teach. This is why we got into this in the first place. We are there to make a connection, to make the world a little bit better. And I hang on to this and I keep this close to my heart all the time. I might not always know the impact that I have as an educator, as an administrator. I know that I made some little difference for that student in that moment, and it makes it all worthwhile. All right, another way that we can support our kids is by being aware of bullying and the forms that that can take, especially in an online environment. So of course, bullying affects all students. I am not dismissing that at all. However, queer kids face some unique challenges. So the majority of queer kids do face some sort of bullying, and it's primarily verbal and takes the place of slurs, that words that are designed specifically to attack individuals. There's anti-trans slurs, anti-lesbian slurs, anti-gay slurs. I'm not going to read them out. They are on your screen. But these are clear indications of a point where an instructor needs to intervene in the behavior. Now, homophobic, biphobic, transphobic bullying, it doesn't always rely on overt use of slurs, but maybe some more deeply ingrained ideas like trans individuals are predators, gay men are carriers of disease, bisexual people are promiscuous, or lesbians need to be corrected through heterosexual sex. So these harmful ideas can be perpetuated through the media, requiring caution when you're using different types of media in your class. And be mindful of the content and the discussions within your online courses, and make sure it doesn't contribute to a hostile environment for LGBTQ students, or to put them on the spot for having to defend themselves or their very existence. When you use your discussion forums in your Brightspace course, have clearly established ground rules for these discussion forums. I can't highlight that enough. That is the best preventative medicine in preventing this kind of bullying. However, you need to be prepared to respond to student language and be proactive. There's a link right here that will give you some really great resources on how to combat that kind of language if you hear it in your physical school, or if you hear it and read it in your online class. Some great posters here. There's a project that came out that You Don't Say, and it's about terms, that's so gay. Terms we're not saying anymore, terms that we don't want students to say anymore. They've got some great resources there. This is the kind of thing you could print out, put in your classroom, take a screenshot, put it right on your homepage. There's lots of options here to help be proactive to ensure that your space is safe for all students. And finally, what are some technical and logistical ways that we can support these students? Now, a lot of this does have to do with name and gender changes. So, for example, in our specific board, there's 3 different places where a student's name and gender will show: in the learning management system, which is Brightspace by D2L, in our student information system, which is PowerSchool, and in our provincial education system. Now, those 3 programs don't always talk so well to each other. So you need to be thoughtful if you are making a change to a student's name or gender or pronouns, and be thoughtful about where that needs to be. It's important that you find out some of this information. Now, my name, like I said, is Monty. My full name is Monty. It is not short for anything. It is not long for anything. Therefore, for me, what I call myself is Monty. What my parents call me is Monty. What's on my report card is Monty, and what's on all my legal documents is Monty. Not everyone is in that same position, so you need to be thoughtful about that. You need to recognize that there might be a name that you know the student as, but their parents don't know that name. And that may or may not line up with what's on their report card or what's on a legal document. This is a screenshot of the grades tool, which I really love to use in a different way like this. So You'll see here, I've got the actual name of the student that we have registered in our system. Our school has a lot of flexibility, so sometimes our students start at different times. I've got start date. And then next, I've got the student name. And here what I put is actually what they put in that survey about what they want me to call them. I've also got things like age, gender, and it goes on and on. For example, this was a grade 12 course. I was interested to know if they had taken this course before or not, because that would influence how I interact with them and the sort of support that I would give them. This is some of the best advice that I received. And for anyone that's watching this, I know that you're ready for this because you chose to come here, you chose to watch this. Check with your Teachers Association and school district to see what policies have been developed to support you and your students in this work. If the policies are not in place or they don't have protections inclusive of gender and sexual minorities, advocate for it and work for it to have these policies implemented, because remember, policy enables protection. So think about this. What supports currently exist in your context? What supports are already there for these kids in your classroom, in your school, in your district, in your city, in your province? What's already there, and what can you still tap into? I guarantee there's resources in your school, in your district, in your city, in your province. I guarantee that there's things out there. You've got to find what works for you within the cultural and within the legal bounds of where you are with your work. All right, I know that was rapid fire. I know that I went through a million different things, but what I really want you to get out of this is, in what ways will you and can you support queer kids in your environment? I've got a few examples here. Is it something like volunteering for the GSA or setting up a GSA? Is it putting your pronouns in your email signature so it's there and it's visible and it helps students understand? Is it putting a GIF or a clip art in your online class telling people that this classroom is diverse, inclusive, accepting, welcoming, and it's a safe space for everyone? Or like you see here, what our board did is actually printed out some stickers. So on most of the doors in our school, we have a beautiful little pride sticker. It says, "This is a welcoming, caring, respectful, and safe school." So take that away today. What is something that you can do to ensure that these students are safe and feel supported? I have so many resources. I've got lots of digital resources, lots of print resources. You'll have access to all of this if you go to this URL. Now, you probably know about URL shortener. You type the big long thing in, it comes up with a name. The name that randomly generated for me was 2MDadsF, 2 male dads in San Francisco. I think it's wonderful and I want to keep that forever and ever, so it's easy to remember. So this is going to include this presentation. It's going to include 62 pages of curated resources, which include things like that cute little chubby unicorn. It includes some research documentation, some lesson plans, terminology, lots of great stuff in there. And they will also include a whole list of additional digital resources. Now, because it's digital, it is something I'm updating all the time, including that really great survey that came out from the Trevor Project just today. So that's going to be included in there as well. I am fortunate because my name is Monty Tanner and I am the only Monty Tanner out there. So you type Monty Tanner into Google, you're going to find me somehow. Best way is through Gmail. You can send me a message there. You can follow me on Twitter and send me a message there. I love to connect with you. I would love to further this conversation, and please feel free to reach out. In addition, I have my own website, teachingandlearningonline.com. It is something I've put together about 9 or 10 years ago. It's been highly updated for our pandemic times, but it does have a lot of great resources. There is a whole page on there on how to support queer youth, but there's also information about the COVID-19, new teachers to online learning, working from home guidelines, all of that. You can take a look for that as well. So I
Amazing.
know that was fast and furious, but I wanted to thank D2L for having me here. Thank you, Bridget, for meeting with me and having all of this prepared. And I look forward to reaching out and meeting or greeting any of you in the days to come.
Thank you so much, Monty. This was amazing. I know I feel so inspired after listening to you speak and watching all of your slides. And I hope that everyone who attended today has gotten the same that I've gotten out of it. So thank you so much for your time and your expertise. As I said, the slides, as well as the additional slides that Monty has provided, will be up later this week. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Monty, so much. Have a great day.